You're listening to Quorum Radio.
Castro's Secrets, Cuban Intelligence, the CIA, and the Assassination of John F. Kennedy by Brian Littell, former CIA analyst for Latin America. With permission from the author, Fidel Castro had denied that he and the DGI knew anything about Oswald before the assassination. Quote, "We never in our life heard of him," he insisted in a speech about 30 hours after Kennedy's death. For about 48 years, Castro was Cuba's supreme spy master, making every key decision, managing the minutest details of important operations, even hosting friendly meetings with his most outstanding foreign penetration agents. It would therefore have been characteristic for him to have insisted on knowing everything he could about Oswald. In all likelihood, he demanded to see everything the DGI had collected about the assassin. One proof of Fidel's duplicity in the telephone conversation between two Cubans, secretly recorded by the CIA station in Mexico City on the evening of November 22nd, 1963, a few hours after Kennedy was murdered, a man, seemingly a DGI officer, placed a call to Luisa Calderon at the Cuban consulate in the Mexican capital. The CIA had installed a number of taps on embassy phone lines and transcribed the most important conversations. The young and ebullient Calderon was of interest. She was known by the CIA to be a DGI officer. The CIA's transcript includes the following incriminating comment about Oswald by the caller. Quote, "Oh yes, he knows Russian well. And also this fellow went with Fidel's forces into the mountains, or wanted to go. Something like that." End quotes. Calderon responded with a single exclamatory word, "Serious!" The caller then abruptly changed the subject, also with just one word. "Enough," he said, as if he had already revealed too much over a phone line that Cuban intelligence certainly suspected was tapped. A question never previously asked: how could the caller have known that Oswald, quote, "wanted to go with Fidel's forces into the mountains," close quotes? There had been no media coverage of any such talk by the assassin before Calderon's conversation. He is not known to have confided those plans with anyone other than Delgado, Marina, and apparently the Los Angeles Cubans. The caller could only have known this by reading the secret DGI files. 4 other sources have confirmed that Fidel and the DGI had advanced knowledge of Oswald. Vladimir Rodriguez Lajera, the first important defector from Cuban intelligence, fully trusted by the CIA and used in sensitive operations, told his handlers in May 1964 that Castro had lied. The defector was at DGI headquarters in Havana when news of Kennedy's death was broadcast. It was there that he heard other officers discussing what they already knew about Oswald. Alfredo Mirabal, an intelligence officer under consular cover at Havana's Mexico City embassy, inadvertently revealed in 1978 that in September 1963, he had informed headquarters about Oswald. Jack Childs, a trusted FBI agent in its highly sensitive Operation Solo, also provided reliable information proving that Castro knew about Oswald before November 1963. Child's undercover work included a meeting with Castro in Havana in May 1964 that is described in Chapter 7. Remarkably, Castro revealed to Childs that he had been aware that, while at the Cuban consulate in Mexico City, Oswald had threatened to murder Kennedy. And finally, Florentino Aspiaga, the highest level, most decorated officer ever to defect from the DGI, is convinced that Fidel had advanced knowledge of the assassination in Dallas. Aspiaga's story is told throughout the following chapters. Yet these indicators of Cuban regime deception and apparent DGI engagement with Oswald have never been properly evaluated. The Los Angeles consulate contacts were overlooked by the FBI and the Warren Commission. The CIA did not inform the Commission of Calderon's November 22nd phone conversation. Rodriguez Lajera's knowledge that Castro had lied apparently was not shared with this commission. Mirabal's incriminating error went unnoticed. In June 1964, J. Edgar Hoover submitted a report that minimized and distorted the meaning of Operation Solo information acquired from Castro. Aspiaga's story was not publicly revealed until the initial publication of this book. Until Oswald's own death, 2 days after Kennedy's, the allure of Castro's revolution never faded. Yet after leaving the Marine Corps, Oswald decided, impulsively it appears, to defect to the Soviet Union rather than to live in Cuba. During his last months at El Toro, he was straddling the two competing impulses. Delgado remembered that, quote, every so often after Oswald started to get in contact with these Cuban people, he started getting little pamphlets in newspapers, and he always got a Russian paper, end quotes. Another Marine, his roommate, remembered Oz spending a lot of time studying Russian. reading Russian language books and becoming better versed in Marxist ideology. Soon to be a civilian, he was considering these two alternatives for starting a new life. Why he chose Moscow will never be known. There is no reliable evidence, for example, that he ever felt an abiding attraction to the Soviet Union similar to what thrilled him about Cuba. Marguerite Oswald, his mother, who knew his quirks and needs better than anyone, understood how easily he might have gone the other direction. She told an FBI agent in 1964 that she was surprised and upset after learning he had, quote, gone to Russia, end quotes. It would not have surprised her at all, she said, if he had instead defected to Cuba. If the Warren Commission had asked Nelson Delgado, he might have said exactly what Marguerite did. She obviously had heard her son speak adoringly of Castro. Back in the United States after the failure of his Soviet sojourn, Oswald was scathing in his criticism of what he had experienced. He convinced himself that Cuban communism was pure and dynamic, more revolutionary in its jousting with Yankee imperialism. Castro appeared to be all things the elderly and plotting Soviet hierarchs were not. They had capitulated to Kennedy in the October 1962 missile crisis, while Castro had stood his ground in refusing to allow inspectors on Cuban soil. Oswald was aware, too, that his hero was fending off predatory American campaigns to oust him from power. In a speech on July 26, Castro enumerated some of the worst offenses of the covert war. He told how the Kennedy administration and the CIA were, quote, mobilizing for new aggressions. They bombed and killed defenseless families, end quotes. The, quote, imperialists and pirates. They committed acts of sabotage, end quotes. It was Kennedy, Castro said, who, quote, fathered and developed aggressions against Cuba. Let the Cuban people of the world know it, end quotes. Oswald by then had persuaded himself that Castro needed his help. The tortured loner, unnaturally enamored of Cuba's revolution, felt a compelling need to help protect the bearded man he worshipped. That spring and summer, living in New Orleans, Cuba was seemingly always on his mind. Marino recalled that, quote, he used to talk to me endlessly about Cuba, end quotes. He read two American Marxist tabloids that regularly ran translations and summaries of Castro's speeches, along with venomous attacks on Kennedy. He listened to Radio Havana propaganda tirades. Marina wrote in a personal narrative she shared with the Warren Commission that, quote, he became conceited about doing such an important job and helping Cuba, end quotes. He wanted her to help him hijack a plane to go there. A picture of Castro was hung on the wall where they lived. He began publicly advocating pro-Castro causes, gaining exposure on local radio and television. He tried, with no success, to form a chapter of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, FPCC, a cheerleading group covertly funded by Cuban intelligence. His hatred of his own country was deepening, he told a Cuban exile in New Orleans, that if Cuba were invaded by the United States, he would fight on Castro's side. In early August, acting out a feckless plan to spy for Cuba, he tried to infiltrate a militant anti-Castro exile group in New Orleans and had several encounters with Carlos Bringuier, its local representative. Bringuier wrote that Oswald came into his store in the French Quarter, introduced himself, and stayed to talk about Cuba for about an hour. He asked the Cuban emigre, quote, for literature against Castro, end quotes. Bringuier told the Warren Commission that, quote, Oswald told me that he had been in the Marine Corps, had training in guerrilla warfare, and was willing to train Cubans to fight against Castro. He was willing to go himself to fight against Castro. I turned down his offer. He insisted and told me that he would bring me a book to train Cubans to fight against Castro, end quotes. Bringuier, previously an attorney in Havana, was suspicious and concluded that his visitor was a provocateur. He was right. Oswald was trying to gather information about the group's membership and plans that he intended to share with Cuban officials. He had no doubt learned from reports in the New Orleans media about the FBI seizure a few days earlier of bomb-making materials stored by militant Cuban exiles outside of the city. If he could learn more about such commando operations and their leaders, he was sure he would be more attractive to the Cuban regime as a defector. Hey folks, please subscribe to Quorum Radio and share.